All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education for the Appleton Area School District. My name is Kay Eggert, and first roll call of fellow board members. James Bacon.
Here.
Edward Ruffalo.
Here.
Chris Sauter.
Here.
Jason Kolpak.
Here.
Peng Tao.
Here.
Board member Ross will be here in just a few minutes. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, the reminder, anyone who might be joining us virtually, that the materials for tonight's meeting are on board docs, which can be linked to through the district website. I am then going to ask if there are any requests by board members to remove any of the consent agenda items for separate consideration tonight. Okay, seeing none, then could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda as written?
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Thanks, Chris.
Second.
Thanks, James. Any questions on that? Seeing none, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We are going to move on the agenda to item number 5, and that would be Sun Prairie. Five of the 7 board members and the superintendent, as well as Kayla, did attend the Sun Prairie Board Governance Gathering last week. And this would be an opportunity if anyone in attendance had any insights or any highlights that they would like to share. I'll ask if anyone has something that they want to mention. Okay, go ahead.
I will reflect back that I think the takeaway for me was that good governance means being able to work together and not individually spearheading your own agenda. And I think I appreciate being grounded in that again, and then being grounded in other practices around what governance means. Even though we're very public facing, it's also very important that we actually have good relationships with one another. And that we can have really fruitful conversations with each other, and disagreement is always okay. But at the end of the day, obviously, we have to take responsibility for what it is. And then I think the other part that was shared really well by the superintendent in La Crosse was how they did policy versus operations at the board level, and what the board directed the superintendent to actually do. That I think having some of that example was really well taken then by me, at least.
Thank you. And I'll add, I thought that the keynote speaker that they had some really good points and good reflection concepts for us. And the one that I have been thinking about often since that day was that 50% of our time we should be really wanting to be talking about student results. And so I know that will be an ongoing discussion for us about how do we make sure that we are really spending the majority of our time, or at least half of it, talking about student results rather than adult inputs that we may want to cite. So anyways, to follow on that discussion, I'm hoping that, and we've brought this up a little bit, that we can do a session as just our board to have some more discussion about just some of the maybe the areas that we still do have a little confusion about, some of the fine points of coherent governance and how we want to approach those. It's obvious that of the districts who did participate in sharing information last week, there are some differences in how the districts do use coherent governance. And so I think it'll be worth it for us to kind of hone in on how we can make sure that we're using it to the best of how we want to. So we're gonna look for a time to do that. I know everyone's schedules are busy, but we will try to coordinate a time. I don't even want to say when, but we're gonna look for a time to have a board workshop, just, you know, or and board development for us on coherent governance. So, okay. And anything else on that? Otherwise, we can move on. All right, we will then move on to under number 6, our business services update. Holly Burr, I'm going to ask you to share with us, please.
Good evening, everyone. Business Services has 2 items for your consideration tonight. The gifts, grants, or gifts donations, and the grants list for January through April. First is the district has received 97 gifts or donations totaling $231,578.92. And following regular procedures, letters will be sent out thanking the individuals or organizations for their support of the Appleton Area School District. And then secondly, the district received 4 new grants for the 23-24 year since last reported in December. The totals were included in your item for consideration, and you will be asked to approve these as part of the superintendent's consent agenda under 8A and 8B. Are there any questions on either of these?
Holly, just to verify, I mean, the grants that we've received, these are grants that we typically do receive each year.
Yes. It's just some of them, the vast majority come in the fall, summer or fall. We do sometimes get a few stragglers like these 4. And then in some cases, it's a part 2. So one of them was the fresh fruit and vegetable program. So that's kind of a part 2 for the year.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions in the board room, so we will move on. Then we will move to school and student services update. Dr. Harrison.
Good evening, everyone. School Services, Student Services has 2 items this evening for your consideration. First item is the English Language Arts materials purchase for our interpersonal communication course. And the second item is also English Language Arts materials purchase, the book titled The Martian. As a follow-up, I was able to confirm with Kelly Leopold, who did, I presented on her behalf on May 6th, these 2 items. She did confirm, I believe you had the question as far as potential adult language, and to verify, this would be the classroom edition of that book. So we would not need to worry about what would normally be associated with the novel. These are both items part of tonight's superintendent's consent agenda as items 8C and 8D respectively. And it is our recommendation for approval. Any questions?
Steve, just comment. Thank you very much. I did see looking at the role for the IFC that it was the classroom edition. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Steve. And you know, again, this had been presented at the last board meeting. We had discussion about it, and this is no new information to report at this time. This is because we've already had full discussion of both of these items. So, thank you. Then I am going to ask for the personnel services update. Julie King.
Good evening. Personnel Services has 4 items for the board's consideration on the superintendent's consent agenda. Those are items 8E through H, consisting of 10 new educator hires, 3 educator resignations, 2 for current employees and 1 who rescinded her acceptance for a position, 1 educator contract change, And then approval for an administrative transfer of Po Yi Zhang from Madison Middle School Associate Principal to Madison Middle School Principal. Are there any questions on any of these 4 items?
It does not appear that there are any questions, so thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to move to the board's consent agenda, which is 2 sets of meeting minutes. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
James Bacon,
Aye.
Peng Tao,
Aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Kay Eggert.
Aye. Then on to the superintendent's consent agenda. Superintendent Hartjes.
The superintendent consent agenda includes 8 items for your consideration. The first 2 items, 8A and B, were reported on by Holly Berg during the business services update. Items 8C and D were reported on by Dr. Steve Harrison during the student services, school services update. And the last 4 items, E through H, were reported on tonight by Julie King during personal services update. And I recommend approval of these items 8A through H.
I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
James Bacon, Peng Tao.
Aye.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Kay Eggert,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
and Ed Ruffalo.
Aye.
Okay, we are going to move to reports. And we do have under school and student services a report on academic and career planning, the yearly communication. So welcome again to Dr. Harrison and Kristen.
All right, thanks everyone. And as Kay indicated, I'm joined tonight by Kristen Comerford, who is our current technical education and career-based learning coordinator for the Appleton Area School District. We actually have 3 different items that we'll be talking through with you this evening. And the first item is one of our annual notifications that required by state statute for us to provide a communication to the board and to the overall public regarding various career planning activities that do take place within the school district. And this is also connected to OE8 as far as ensuring that the board does receive timely communications. And so Kristen's going to walk us through really 2 things. The first one you'll see will be our keywords, key times, overall communication about to the academic career plan, and then also highlights of the plan itself. And so with that, I will turn things over to Kristen.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening. In our keywords, key times, the first part really talks about the why, and academic and career planning came into law in 2017-18 school year that all school districts must create a plan for students K-12, but monitored and implemented in grades 6 through 12. So as part of that law came our annual notification to you on how academic career planning is going in the Appleton Area School District. So our definition was created that it was a student-driven, adult-supported process. And our goal is that students create their own unique version of a post-secondary success. And how we interpret that with our ACP coordinator school counselors is making sure we have a continuum of offerings for all of our students to access, providing them many opportunities to know what they like, what they don't like, and set themselves up for success. So last year was our first year that I presented to you on our board. So how I put in that section, how we adapted our plan, and we'll go over our plan shortly. But from the 2022 to the 2023 school year, we really refocused our business advisories. When our ACP started, we started with 3 individual high school business advisories. Over time, we realized we were doing a lot of the similar work and our boards wanted to come together to work as one. So we created a K-12 business and community advisory, and that was Julie Barkolt's community engagement coming together. As we know, we support academic and career planning together. And then that led to the structure of one high school business advisory for this year. So that was a change that we went through. We also utilized a different participation data. So you'll see some of that data I share in our report here today. It allowed us to really encourage all staff to enter their academic and career planning. And this was our first year in the process, so we're going to still get more engagement with staff, but we encouraged our classroom teachers because we know that in that continuum, our ACP coordinators, launch coordinators are not the only ones doing and offering career experiences for our students. We also hosted career fairs in all of our high schools that were very successful, and ATEC also offered 2 on their own specific to construction and manufacturing that supported academic and career planning. And we've also increased our collaboration with our content teachers. We've had a lot of ask for some of our AP classes after testing. They've really then dove into career development as an example. So that's continuing to grow. That grows also because we have steady site launch coordinators there to support our academic and career planning coordinators in the schools. And then we have some goals and things that we're looking for. In 22-23, we did discuss about launching Zello. We feel we're more prepared to launch that for this upcoming school and felt for the next school year, and felt also with our 6th graders moving up to the middle school, it seemed like a better time to launch that new experience for our parents. So they'll be able to see what their students are doing in Zello, which is the state offered platform for career development. We also will look at the state's new Wisconsin Career Readiness Standards. They're in draft form right now, but they are proposed to be approved shortly. They have 3 categories that students are career ready, learner ready, and life ready. So we've been diving into those in our assessment curriculum instruction department, seeing how we can integrate that into our coursework. And then also really working on continuing our dual enrollment, that post-secondary portion of our school report card that has the categories of dual enrollment, advanced courses, industry recognized credentials, and work-based learning. So that is the keywords, key times for this year. And then if you want to dive into the plan, I'll just highlight a few pieces, knowing that you had this document prior. It lists, really this puts together a lot of information from our website that's out there. It puts in a succinct document for you to reference. And then it also, I gathered on, if you go to page 2, Kayla, some of our data that really you can highlight that supports our career readiness, how we're measured by our state. Those are our 3 years of data specific to the post-secondary preparation data. I also gathered 3 years of data from our YSASH, which measures students entering college. So it measures it, as you see in the year 2020 to 2021 in that category. They take a first poll when students enter right away, then they measure if they enter within 6 months, and then they measure if they enter within a year later. So if you see, that's the parentheses after. So it does see that our college enrollment went up over time, just not everybody entered right away that first immediately upon graduation. The data I mentioned that we're using a new tracking system in our 6 through 12 high schools shows are in the numbers there. We have had 8,426 participants so far, and you can see the breakdown of what activities they're participating in there. Some of those could be duplicate numbers. I know we have students who have gone on multiple experiences because I've seen them, but it's due to interest and opportunity. If you scroll to that next page, there's a bar graph of our participation. So it increases over the years. And then you can see also that the pie graph shows what areas. You can see we're really hitting our 16 career clusters. We have multiple opportunities in all pathways. So that was exciting to see for our students. The rest of the plan really goes into, it's not new information, but it highlights how we map out our curriculum, how we map out our career pathways. The career pathways are really tied to career and technical education. Also, that comes up in the Carl Perkins funding, how we gather our labor market, how we ensure we're meeting all of our students' needs. So are there any questions about academic career planning in the plan that was presented to you?
I just wanted verification.
Yeah.
For the post-secondary data, that would be 4-year and 2-year programs?
Yes.
Because it would not be any certifications or anything.
No.
It would just be 4-year and 2-year. And
Correct.
so somehow DPI can determine if one of our students would enter something.
Yes.
A year from now, okay.
Yeah, they,
Okay.
it's a National Student Clearinghouse. They partner with the colleges then feed that back information into our state data system. So that is how all that enrollments.
Okay, so the data, like 51.8% for 22-23, that includes that, no. Yes, would that include the additional 0.3%?
I did not add that in there at that
Okay,
time, no.
okay,
Yep, so you would
so-
add on that number. I wanted to put our base number in there of the initial first year and then show you the percentage that adds.
Yeah, so it was interesting to me, whatever, that,
So a couple went at semester. They took the first semester off after, and then they joined in for that
Right,
spring
right.
semester.
thank you.
Or just to clarify, or since it was 6 to 12 months, would that also include those that took a year off?
Yes.
And then went? in
Well,
that
right now,
case?
this one is just 6 months. If it says after 6 months, eventually it'll go 6 to 12.
And then that counts the whole, like, people that took a gap year or something
Correct.
else like that. took a year.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, correct.
I just want to add, this is data that we at one time paid National Clearinghouse for. So we have this data going back to 2003, but now the state collects it for us. So there's no longer a fee for us to pay. We have to get it, or we can get it off the Wise Dash site.
Question, somewhere in this document I clicked on
Yeah.
some items and there were some notations of specific events that were taking place at different high schools. And I guess my question, I think there was an event that was taking place at one of the high schools. A company that is local came in and shared information. And I guess I was wondering, would students from the other two high schools then have that option of attending those sessions? Because they seemed like they were geared particularly to those classes, and then how that information is disseminated.
Yeah, so our site launch coordinators are the ones who really set up a lot of the events happening in the school, and they meet weekly, they talk. An event that started at East a couple years ago as their in the health sciences psychology panel. This year, East, and it housed at East, West, and North attended. So it depends on the event and how many that speaker wants in that experience and the space we can get, but they do work to collaborate. On April 30th, we had a joint event that went out to the Appleton Airport. So they do really collaborate together and work with the businesses to see what works best for them. If we can get them individually into each school, we do that also.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And
Yeah.
encouraging, thanks.
So this is an informational only item. It's not one you'll see coming back for voting in the future. It's just meant to provide you with an overview as required by state statute. So any other questions for Kristen? All right, thank you. All right, our second item is actually a culminating work over the last couple of years that Kristen has led along with our fantastic elementary STEM teachers who will be joining us in a moment here. And so this is an item of information this evening. It will be coming back to you then in 2 weeks for consideration for voting at that time. And this is specific to the curriculum work that has been developed for grades 5K through 5th grade with anticipated implementation in the upcoming 2024-25 school year. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kristen and allow her to introduce our 3 elementary STEM teachers.
Just making some room for them at the table with me. Hope you don't mind. So I'd like to call up Jill Kinney, Andrew Zimmerman, and Melissa Schmidt, who have been working with us this past school year. As part of our referendum, they were hired on to start the school year with us and develop our STEM curriculum this year. So we're excited to be in front of you with you today to share where we're at and excited for the 24-25 school year. So. Thank you. Yeah. So I'd like to ground us just in our work that started. This is the vision that was created by our STEM work group and 12, 13, 22. And this is really where we referenced and worked off of this whole school year. Also bringing all of this work we've done back in front of our work group, gathering their feedback throughout the school year. The first thing I'd like to share with you before I turn it over to Jill, Melissa, and Andrea is to talk about our K-5 STEM standards. Our year started with a lot of research. Knowing that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we started diving into all of the state standards that were out there within there. Also looking at computer science and career and technical education. And when we came down to it, we were looking at 400 standards, K-5, that we would be looking at. We dove deeper to dive into our math standards being instructed and our science standards being instructed in our elementary classrooms, knowing that those are being covered within their content. Going back to our vision and also looking at the experiences our work group wanted our students to have. We saw clearly that engineering and design was an area that was not strong. It was there, but it wasn't strongly instructed in that math and science area. So we knew we needed to cover those standards. In looking at those standards, we also connected with our state. There are not currently a plan to develop state STEM standards. We reached out to looked at other states and they're starting their work in STEM standards. So when we collaborated as a group, we really decided that we really needed to put together our own standards of all of those to make it manageable for instruction of our educators, manageable to report out to our families how students are progressing in STEM, and manageable for you also to know, like, what is STEM in the Appleton Area School District? So our goal is that our students through STEM will have strong communication, collaboration, strong engineering and design, and engage in critical thinking and develop technology literacy. We are still brushing on a lot of those standards. That work of the 400 standards and reviewing them really helped us design lessons that could support and enhance our mathematics and science in our classrooms. But when we came down to it, we felt that this was the best representation of our STEM standards. So with that, that led to the next session. Kindergarten.
So as we started looking at kind of all of our experiences, we wanted each grade level to be something different. So we wanted to start our kindergartners with kind of their introduction to STEM. What is STEM? We are going to teach them a little bit of the engineering design process. We're going to use a lot of literature so that they have kind of a purpose, that they're going to start building and designing something. They're going to use a variety of materials to build with. They're also going to focus on kind of looking at the structure and function of different objects. So a lot of just kind of introduction, building, designing, trying new things. We're going to introduce them to coding. They're going to start with kind of the basic coding of unplugged coding. They're going to do some programming on the computer, and then they're also going to do some programming directly on robots. And then the last thing we wanted them to do was look at some force and motion and to get an introduction to simple machines. And then in first grade, we are going to continue to build upon that. A lot of first grade, we're going to try to get these kids working together on projects. So discussing and sharing their ideas. They're going to continue with their coding and their programming. We're going to introduce them to basic circuits. Again, infusing that literature in there to try to solve some of those problems using circuits. They're going to continue with simple machines, but now looking at how are they using them in the real world. So how can we look at some of those different things? They're also going to start to look at space and flight, looking at some rockets and different things in first grade.
Our second graders will do a little bit more complex computational and robotics programming and coding. They'll be on different devices than they were in K1. And then they're going to continue to collaborate on the engineering design process. They're going to work together. They're going to make improvements together. They're going to solve problems together. And then we're going to begin talking about some environmental issues, some sustainable resources, and how they impact the environment and their daily lives. Third grade is a big space and flight year. Forces of flight, they're going to start working on that using the engineering design process. They're also going to be introduced to 3D printing and how it's changing our world. So very exciting. And then they will do more complex circuits using different kinds of circuits instead of just,
Snap
you know,
circuit.
snap circuit type things. And they're going to understand how those structures work together.
As we move on to fourth grade, you're going to hear us use the words continue because we continue to build each year on the knowledge that they have gained in the year previous. So in fourth grade, again, they will continue to work on the engineering and design process using a lot of the real world problem solving. They're also moving on through energy. Fourth grade has a very large focus on energy, using a lot of hands-on experiments and continuing again to code and program, develop those skills that they will be taking on to fifth grade, which basically culminates everything they have been learning in K5 yearing, K4 technically. Once again, we're going to follow through with the engineering and design process, and they will be working again with space and aviation. If you think of the fifth grade year, they're bridging everything. So think of, we said it's kind of like using a summative of the course. You're having a summative that year 5, and they will be taking everything that they've learned on circuits, space and energy, and they'll be incorporating those into many of the challenges and tasks that they have to complete.
So, yeah,
Go ahead.
in our documents, we gave you a brief overview, or you had all of our curriculum documents, and today we wanted to share with you a overview of each of the units that our students will be working on. One of the things we've had the opportunity to is really field test a lot. We gave an update a few months ago, but really test materials and resources and really hone in then also on what was age appropriate. Because some things that are published out there age appropriate weren't really task appropriate for our students at that time. So we really had that opportunity with this also. So questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you. This is exciting. One question I have, I think especially as it relates in the upper grades, given what you described, but I think is relevant probably every year except maybe kindergarten. How are you thinking about the way things build on each other, especially as we start out and our students haven't had the prerequisite years, those first several years, obviously. And then even potentially down the road, if we have a student that moves here from somewhere where they maybe also weren't exposed to this and they're coming into a class that has had multiple years of it, how do we think about adjusting or meeting those kids where they are, knowing what we're hoping, is a building progression as well?
I think one of the things that will help in that is the consistent design process that is built over the multiple grades. So if a student comes in, they'll learn that, and that predictability happens each class as they work through it. I think also a way to help with students who transition in at different times is sometimes just those one-on-one teacher meetings where teachers connect with them, maybe do a little background knowledge, knowing though that some of the learning here will also be supported. They'll learn about some of the similar concepts in science during that time, that they'll have some transfer knowledge coming in. We'll also hopefully get our co-curriculars, so maybe if we'll have that opportunity to build more. But I think the educators will adapt as we do a lot with students moving in and out to help them.
In many of our lessons, we had written, like, if students aren't ready for this, try this, just to give teachers that option.
And we had lots of discussions knowing that next year is the first year for all, but then it's really exciting to be like, where will they go and what are they going to come up with? And also some of our students have some background knowledge outside of class that they'll be bringing into. So, yeah.
Do you sort of anticipate then maybe the first couple years being like a learning experience for ourselves, then I'm assuming, and kind of trying things out, seeing what background knowledge students maybe bring in from outside of school to shape then once they start bringing in more background knowledge over time. But I'm assuming over time, some of these lessons and or activities might evolve in ways given that. Is that a fair assumption for the first several years? Cool.
Yeah, and then this would fall in our curriculum review program evaluation. So we'll always continue to review and evaluate. And then that's also the power of a professional learning community, that all the STEM teachers can talk and help adapt to meet our students' needs.
I guess then my last question on that front is like, do we feel like we have you mentioned one specific piece with like, if students aren't ready, then maybe here's already an idea to try. Do we feel like we have everything we need to support our teachers doing it for the first time, knowing it's little background knowledge for kids from school and the first time for them doing it. Like, are there any, I don't know, anything else you can speak on that topic? I would just be interested to hear, knowing that I'm sure we have a lot of really excited teachers that are like just ready to go and give it their all. But just wanting to make sure, obviously, we're doing everything we can to support them to make it a manageable transition so that they capitalize on the excitement they're bringing and don't feel like it burns them out faster.
Yeah, we actually get to meet with them already on Friday during our professional development days. So that'll be a really exciting morning for everybody. Give them an overview and see what questions they have and how we can plan PD going forward based on their needs.
And the resources and materials these 3 teachers have created, mapped out 38 weeks, slide decks, lesson plans, alternative, and they have done a great job mapping it out. So they have a great set of resources to start with. Knowing anytime you start something new, it kind of feels like a fire hose some days, you know? And that's where we'll continue, like, we'll meet with them Friday, get a pulse for where everybody's at, and then continue to meet through the year to support.
That's really cool. I'm excited about this. I'm sure I'm not alone. And thank you all very much for all the work you've put into this to make it a great experience for our students and staff.
Just a question. Thank you for being here tonight, by the way. So our charter schools at the elementary level, do they have the option of participating or not participating? I'm curious. I seem to remember that. And then how many have opted in? And if they do opt in, like Fox River Academy, can they add their own little flavor so it's supportive of their charter? Just curious as to how that's all unfolding.
So all have opted in. Yes. And then, yeah, the charters, we are providing them the curriculum resources and materials that they need also. Depending, their classical, we're doing a little differently because they had an additional resource to support their STEM curriculum. But we're collaborating on resources, materials, still also respecting charter governance boards and the policies there and how that's run. So we are working on that. And then Melissa taught at Fox River Academy and then came into our role. So maybe you could get a little input on.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're gonna follow ours exactly, or if they used to do STEM twice a week, and I don't know if they're gonna go now down to just once a week, but I think the charters have the option to definitely kind of add their own twist to make it fit for them.
And I know out at APM at Montessori, they're already, the principal and the teacher out there are already collaborating on how that's going to look in their building.
So thank you. I'm very happy to hear they're all opting to participate. Is there any setting at the elementary school level then going into, as we roll this out, that they would not have access to STEM resources, education? We have 100% good.
Yes, to my knowledge, there is not a setting that wouldn't have access.
Thank you very much.
Hello, also very excited for STEM. I think, the entire community is. They overwhelmingly, approved the referendum. And so I think everyone is looking forward to this. And I guess my question is, and I don't expect this necessarily to be different than what happens with other academic programs at the elementary level, but have you talked about or started to strategize ways to make this curriculum accessible to all of our students, including EL and newcomers, and then students with disabilities?
Yes, and we can talk to that. We've partnered with our district EL coach to build in the EDL standards already. So we just started that work month ago. After we roughed these our standards out, then we brought in our EL coordinator too, and then adapting to students' needs, and that will be at times have to be done at the site, not knowing everybody's students' need, but we have a lot of materials. When we were testing them, we were working with all students in the field test.
Just want to say thank you. I really appreciate the fact that everyone will be using the same curriculum and have the same resources, and that's really exciting. So thank you for all of your work.
Yeah, I'd like to echo everyone else, just saying thank you, but I'm really interested to understand how this plays out over time. So please do come back and share how we're adjusting and adapting from what we learned. Really interested in hearing that.
I want to speak just a little bit more about kind of the referendum process. We originally didn't intend to start our STEM classes until the fall of 25, but there was so much excitement around the work that these three ladies have been doing that we decided to move that up a year. And so although our spaces won't be ready until the fall of 25, and our new executive director of facilities and operations, Ray Currett, is with us here. And so he's got a steep learning curve to figure out, okay, what do we want these rooms to look like and how will they function? But we certainly have an opportunity to do some trial work here over the next year so that when we do build those rooms at each of our elementary schools, we'll have a really solid idea of what we're going to do in them.
Sorry, I'd like to ask one last question. I know there's other organizations in the community. The Building for Kids is bringing in some programs. There used to be the Paper Discovery Museum. Now it's Atlas is having a very large, they invited me over for a tour. They're having a very large STEM area. Are we able to partner with them? We thought creatively, maybe through field trips, et cetera, how we might leverage some of the community-based STEM education that's available.
Yeah, that's definitely an area we're gonna explore. We wanted to come to you with a curriculum first before we can get a year going with us, but that is something we definitely want to explore. We really value our community partners and our students seeing beyond the schools of STEM happening. So that is something that we will continue to explore.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Definitely exciting and definitely more to come, but thank you for all of your efforts to this point. So it's terrific. Thanks. Okay, now the third topic.
All right, our final item is an item of information. So this is something you will be seeing again in 2 weeks for consideration at that time. These are two CTE courses that have curriculum updates and material purchases associated with. First one being Introduction to Education and Technology, course 6950, and then also Child Development, which is course 6880. And so Kristen's going to walk us through an overview for both courses, but also how they connect with the overall pathway of courses that we provide our students.
Thank you. Yeah. So as I mentioned, part of our work in current technical education is we work on our comprehensive local needs assessment, evaluating our pathways every year. And currently in front of you, we have a very strong pathway in education. What makes it strong is we have a course sequencing that intensifies as they continue to take courses. There's dual enrollment. There's industry recognized credentials offering, and there's also work-based learning through our CTE internship. But as we reviewed this, and we also looked out in our community at some changes, the Fox Valley Technical College is adding an education pathway. We saw an opportunity to increase the offerings that we have. So, nope. Next, that's just another visual of it. So the course offerings, as we reviewed our pathway, what the changes we would like to make. I'm going to start with our child development, the 680. We would like to add another unit into that curriculum that would increase the age that we teach students up to. Currently, the curriculum teaches up to the age 8. By adding another unit of teaching from age 8 to 21, we can offer an opportunity for a third dual credit course. This third dual enrollment course gives our students options if they would head into the technical college or post-secondary. If they're going in the early childhood ECE pathway, they would then continue into the assistant childcare. But if then with this third course, they can actually go into the EDU pathway, which is the education pathway that the tech just created. So it's an entry-level course there. So our new entry-level child development gives our students more choice options within the educational pathway. So say they took child development and they wanted to add that child and adolescent, then if they move into introduction to teaching and And we would like to, it's been called Intro to Teaching. We would like to rebrand it Intro to Education because education is more than teaching. There's many more careers in it. And if they would take child development and introduction to education, they then could earn another certificate from the tech, the FVTC Intro to Teaching certificate. So it's a very complex little pathway we have here, and there's lots of arrows, but the courses stack up within different pathways, either an early childhood pathway or an education pathway. The change we want to make to our Intro to Teaching beyond changing the name is adding another dual credit to that course, making it a half credit to a full credit. So it'd be Intro to Education and Technology. So the course is Technology and Education. This was a new course offered by our technical college also. A lot of our students who take this course are also our interns who are working in the school. So we wanted to offer them the opportunity when they graduate and take this course of 6 credits. They have the choice in the Intro to Education and Technology of taking 3 credits through UW Oshkosh or 3 credits through Fox Valley Technical College in the Intro to Ed practices. That's like the same course, just one at the tech and one at the UW system. And then the 3rd credit in Technology and Education is new. So in that course, they would walk away with 6 credits, but how and where they're going is up to that student and their pathway. So the teachers, this Intro to Education and Technology is offered district-wide. It's taught by Roz Birch to all students. They join virtually. Most of them do it virtually and then go to work. So we have that flexibility so they can have the most opportunities in our schools. We really know there's a need for educators. In this pathway, we wanted to offer an increased dual enrollment and increased industry credential. It's a little crazy how it works through because some of the courses are interchangeable. So explaining it, we hopefully best through this visual today to help you understand.
Also, the material costs for the textbooks are included as part of the item of information. And so these will be part of the overall planned budget. And they have been out for public input for the minimum 30 days and no input was received for either of those items. So again, tonight, item of information, something that would be coming back here in 2 weeks for voting. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. Can we pull that visual back up though, Kayla? I'm sorry.
Okay.
In an effort to better understand it, maybe.
Yeah.
So like when I look at this, like it just looks like a lot going on. And I'm sure there in many ways there's a lot going on. I'm just trying to make sure I'm connecting the right dots. We are talking about 2 courses that we offer that are taught at our campuses, though one is virtual and it sounds like maybe taught by someone who also works at a college.
No, she works in our district.
Oh, she does work in the district.
Yes, she's a family consumer science teacher at Appleton West.
Okay, so it's just for accessibility that it's
Yes.
done virtually.
Yes.
So because she can't be in 3 places at once.
Correct.
Okay. All right, then that makes sense. So these are AASD courses that just also then earn them credit in a variety, as we see here, ways, and they
Yes.
sometimes can get credit in one of 2 options, it sounds like, depending on what they want,
Mm-hmm.
which is why sometimes the single box goes to 2 arrows with 2 options in a box.
Correct.
Okay. Then mostly this is seniors taking these courses, or is it anywhere in the 9 through 12?
9 through 12, our child development is offered as a freshman level at
Okay.
taking. So a student could take this and take this full pathway, leave with 2 industry recognized credentials and 15 credits.
Okay, so then when we talk about a pathway, we talk like, are we meaning that they take all 4 of the courses under AASD over here, most likely in that pathway to complete it?
A course in career and technical education as a concentrator, a course sequencing is 2.
Any 2 of those 4 then is considering that pathway. Okay. So they pick 2 of those kind of depending on where they want to end up as they go farther right.
Correct.
And they just map them together. Okay.
May have a student who really knows they want to work in early childhood, then we're going to guide them through the early childhood credits, really then focusing in on health, safety, and nutrition and foundations, because that will put them in a great spot when they get out it to the technical college or a four-year college, they'll have those credits transferring and a strong knowledge base.
Okay. This makes more sense now, so I appreciate the clarification. And then your answer, or the thing you just said, actually leads to my next question is, like, how do we, I guess, like, I now forget the word you used a second ago, but like support or expose or guide students like through this, knowing that if they see this in just, you know, a book, a booklet of all the courses, like I'm sure they're not making all these connections that we're trying to make tonight. So can you walk me through, like, how do you identify students that might be interested? How do they seek help? What happens to help people make sense of this pathway?
So in the course registration process for our students, they do presentations about all the course offerings. A lot of the specific conversations come with our teachers who have them in specific, say, a child development class. They're going to talk to them. So happy you're here. You're going to learn about this, but did you know all this course can do for you? And if you really like this, these are other components. And we also talk to our school counselors, so they have that knowledge base too, with our students. This guy, I wouldn't put this visual in front of students.
Sure.
Sorry, I guess I maybe put it in front of you now. That'd be.
No, it's okay.
If it was too much, but
No.
we'll make it more succinct there. But we
No.
really, and sometimes it's, if you really like this, take this course and shrink down the amount of information we're getting so they see that path.
Sure.
This is a really good example of why the areas that Kristen oversee take up the largest portion of our course and career catalog. Because not only just the sheer number of courses, but all the various pathways. And so, like Kristen indicated, one of the things we do as a department every year is weeks before the course and career catalog is available to students and families, we do set up intentional time with our high school and middle school school counselors to make sure we're really going over any updates that have occurred since the year before, but also to Kristen's point, the various pathways and the opportunities as far as dual credit that are associated with the various pathways. And then we've really worked hard over the last 3 to 4 years to set that up within the course catalog so that as students see various pathways that they're interested in, almost like we joke about it, but it really is kind of like a Girl Scout cookie menu, ordering menu, where, you know, this is what you like. These are the different flavors or the different courses that you'd want to be selecting from, to just make it more visual and for it to hopefully make more sense. But as you indicated, not something we do in isolation. We really have to have a lot of conversations with their counselors and staff in order for this to really make sense for our students and families.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and for the record, I don't know how you'd make a better visual of it. So I just wanted to make sure I understood the visual. There's just a lot going on.
I was
So-
prepping to explain this and I'm like, oh, it's so woven together. Do my best.
No, it's okay. And I think even originally I got the gist, and now I'm confident I understand it. So it's okay.
Thank you.
And so then do most students enter these in the 9th grade, or do students kind of enter them at any point then throughout their high school career? Like, what's most common?
It depends on if they're if they're engaged in fine arts or their health class. I would say a number of them are sophomores, but we do get some freshmen that have the course availability. Some want to get into the courses right away. Some, it depends how they attack their credits, right?
Totally.
Some are going for completion, or some I'm going for engagement and completion, and they map it out a little differently.
Yeah. And I totally, to your point, like, I know there's not like a perfect science to this. There's a lot of ways you can get all your credits before you graduate. I also just know our counselor to student ratio is, you know, not where any of us would like it, because we're like every other school in the country, probably. And so I know there's kind of often the default, you know, kind of ways you get exposed to and kind of just go forth. So I was just trying to understand, like, how, because I know all of our counselors aren't meeting one-on-one with all of our kids, especially that frequently.
Right.
So just trying to get a sense of, like, do 8th graders like have, like, when you mentioned like they get some kind of presentation about it, like of the different kinds of pathways, and then from there they're directed to the right resources, and then people are made available for questions if they have questions. Is that like sort of the norm experience for an 8th grader entering high school?
High schools where all the departments are there and parents can come around and ask questions, and that's where they lay out their courses so they can see everything
Got
they
it.
have for that year, for the whole 4 years that students start making their plans. I know that our middle school teachers, I know within career and technical education, talk about our courses all the time, like, if you like this, And I know that it happens in our content areas too, that they all, if you like this, you know, think about these courses when you get to high school. And that engages some of our students that way.
That's awesome. That's really helpful to know. I feel like at our level, we see a high level of so many options and so many amazing things I think we offer. It's just sometimes hard to figure out how does that actually translate, obviously, you know, so that we are sure people know what the options are and have access if they want to take advantage. So anyway, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just might be rehashing a little bit, but I'm going to be looking at the chart and just asking a few questions as well. So, for example, you can just take child development through AASD and just take that course, get the college credits, and also get one of those state certifications.
Yes.
And then if you take child development and the introduction to teaching,
Yep.
or, I'm sorry, are you wanting to change that to introduction to
Yes.
education?
Yes, it'll be intro to education and technology. I didn't update it on this. I apologize for that, miss.
Then you could get the Fox Valley Tech Intro to Teaching certificate.
Yes.
Okay, and like the orange arrow on intro to teaching, that just is there because it means you can also just get the college credits
You
and
can
not
yes,
move over into the
correct.
additional
In
certification.
dual enrollment, students have the opportunity to enroll or not enroll. So we want them to see this as an option for you if you want to enroll, but to earn the one certificate of the intro to teaching, you would need to take the technical college courses to earn that certificate.
Okay, and so all the way back on the AASD side of things, if you want to do a pathway, you can do education pathway and do child development and introduction to education. Or you can do an early childhood education pathway and do 2 of the 3 top courses.
Correct.
Okay, I think that helped me.
You nailed it. Thank you, Nick.
I appreciate all the options that we have, but then it leads me to think about what does that mean in terms of what courses students are not taking during their high school time when we often say that's the time they should explore. So I'm kind of going back and forth on that. So I'm just wondering if a student does not know in their 9th grade year that they're thinking about the education pathway, would they be able to take all of these courses by the time they graduate in order to get the dual credits, or like, what is their?
Because child development is a 1 credit, child health and safety is a half credit, foundations of early childhood is a half credit, and now intro to education and technology is 1 credit. So that is 3 credits. They could put that over their sophomore, junior, and senior year. And then we also have fabulous educators who work with kids if they have scheduling conflicts to make things work for our students. So they could map it out that way if they wanted to. But they may only take 2 of them. And they also may take a course and find out this is nothing I want to do. And then they go into a different pathway. Yes.
Thank you. And then I think that concern about the communication to students, because there are so many pathways, this is just, and hopefully parents are involved in that education process as well, because they may know that their children have an interest, and I know that it'll be ongoing to figure out how best to communicate that all to people, but I think it's kind of complicated, because I think back to when I was in 8th grade, I probably didn't know my pathway.
No.
So, and I know things are accelerated more,
Yes.
more now, but it, just to be conscious of the fact that not everyone will know their pathway, and trying to give everyone the options that are out there, I'm sure is a great challenge. So thank you for,
Thank you.
for doing that work.
For what it's worth, I think the colored arrows do help.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it took a little bit.
Yeah.
So
perfect. Thank you.
no, it's helpful and there's a lot there.
Yep.
awesome that our students have so many opportunities,
Mhm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
We're excited about giving them option.
yes, yes.
And I apologize, I did forget one question that I had earlier. If I take, like, if I'm a kid and I take one of the courses in the AASD course column, I assume I at least have to pass the course in order to get any of the farther to the right side of it. But is there anything else I have to do? Like, how does it work? Like, how do I know, like, do I have to pay money or like register at the same time, or like what happens to get the, at least we'll say college level credits or even potentially the certificate?
So for the technical college credits, there's no cost. And the teacher helps register them. We have partnerships with FBTC and they'll come and assist also and get the
Okay.
students all registered. And then for the CAP, it's the UW Oshkosh, it's the same process. The teacher helps. That one, there is a fee of $300, $100 per credit. But if there is a financial need, we work with our students to help with that. So that's the cost. And then on the certificate side, once they show that they complete it, that's the educator's role. A lot of those are entered into our state system, and then we print those and give them those certificates. Or if that's the assistant childcare, there's a checklist that goes with it. But like the infant toddler, once they complete those technical college, that completion will trigger their certificate to be sent to them.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and so basically it's like built into the course, the supports
Yeah.
essentially to kind of help navigate
Yep.
the other systems. I just think about like 14, 15-year-olds. Like, sure, I can pass a course, but then like, I don't know what it means to get college credit, you know, and so I was just kind of like wondering what that means. Or honestly, even to be honest, like $300 sounds like a lot of money to me. And when I'm 14,
Yes, yeah.
even now.
So they do work to help build their knowledge on that through ACP. We work about dual enrollment, how to maximize their high school plan for options. And
Okay.
so there are multiple places we're trying, families also.
Perfect. And it is possible though that I could take the course, pass the course, and still choose to not get any credit or certification or anything if I really wanted to. But we would try to encourage them and make sure we know they're making an educated choice if that's their choice.
Yes,
Okay.
and I know also the technical college also lets students come show prior knowledge. So maybe a student decided not to, but then they come back and say, I was in this class, I know it's articulated, here's my grades. You can, and they have record, there may be support for that also.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
And just real quick, I'm sure that it's how a lot of students get to these classes is not thinking about the college stuff. It's more probably, I'm just hypothesizing, but like I need an elective and I babysit my brothers and sisters all the time. So I'm going to take Foundations of Early Childhood.
Possibly, yes.
And then bam, a light bulb goes off, hopefully.
Yeah, could be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to move to Personnel Services Report. Julie King.
Good evening. So I'm sharing this evening an item of information on paid time off. As shared previously on the March 13th board work session, this has been a topic that is more frequently coming up from staff in regards to surveys, employee relations as a desired benefit. So what you have before you is an item of information as well as draft handbook language, should it move forward for approval. I would say the handbook language constitutes about 20 hours of work and discussion with the work group as well as administration. Following the work session, the group and administration continued to finalize that handbook language that's attached. Should PTO ultimately be approved by the board. The item of information presented today outlines the organizational goals for PTO and why this transition would be of benefit to the district, including retaining and recruiting staff by enhancing the leave benefit with more flexibility, a payable incentive for attendance, and a simplified system, as well as ensuring continuity of quality education for our students during absences and enhancing the capacity to cover those absences. As noted, the additional cost for this benefit due to the incentive piece of the design would be a maximum of 500,000 annually based on the design. The work group and administration do believe that this investment would be greatly valued by our staff. And this would come forward as a final item for consideration by the board at a later date. Are there questions about PTO?
Julie, clearly there's a significant cost that comes with this. It may very well be a good value if our staff find value in it. So that's a key question for me. What have we done to really ascertain that this is a benefit that people would value highly to offset the cost of doing it?
It's been kind of a balance as far as releasing information, not knowing if this was a direction that the district, after all the research, was going to go to. So I would say to date, it's been documented in employee engagement surveys, stay interviews that have been conducted. It's a significant theme that has come up through those. As well as it was a topic at employee relations that they hear from staff that this would be a benefit for almost a year prior to us kicking off the research.
Excuse me, can you remind me which employee groups we're talking about here as well?
We would be talking about all employee groups, so we would have one same system for whether you're a 12-month employee or whether you're a school year employee.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Julie, just a question that I appreciate the work, and I thought the language, I mean, it seems like it's detailed enough that I certainly can understand what would be proposed. But I do have a question. If the max that we'd want to spend annually would be 500,000, so that maybe the payout rate could change. Is that true?
So what we would establish and what we had a item
Mhm.
was a set rate of 140 for educators and administrators, or $100 a day for support staff. And then in the design, the maximum payout, depending on what somebody currently has in their sick leave or will become a reserve leave bank, the maximum would be 4 days. So that was one piece that we did extensive research on in talking to other districts that have implemented the system, that those amounts can change in the future, but having some parameters on a maximum to make sure that it remains affordable was a point of concern.
I appreciate that clarification. I initially had the sense that the rate could change depending on the utilization of desiring the payouts, but
So
that's,
this is currently using the trends if everybody who is eligible participated in 2 or 4 days of payout. So it is a maximum amount based on the current design.
thank you for that
Yep.
clarification.
I may have been confused now.
Okay.
When you say a maximum, the 140 and the 100 or the 500,000?
So the 100 and the 140 are the established rates that, should this be approved for 24-25, that we would utilize. And our staff would have an option. So the way it's designed and built is they could opt to use the time, they could opt for an incentive up to 2 or 4 days, or they could opt for that incentive to go into a 403B. So I would say both are max. In the $500 was based on those numbers in the calculation. So the 500,000 would be the max impact to the budget using those numbers that are proposed in the item.
And then does this plan, I'm pretty sure there are still personal days this year. Does this plan eliminate personal days or incorporate them somehow into the
Yeah.
PTO?
So that's what would happen, is those different buckets that you have with different rules, for lack of a better term, I'll say buckets. So personal days, emergency leave, sick leave, all of those are encompassed into the PTO. And then there's more flexibility in which those PTO days can be used for. So it's not a strict, it must be this reason or that reason. There's more flexibility in using those days. The one type of leave that is separate, and this was a point of a lot of discussion during our meetings, is bereavement. So bereavement remains as a separate benefit bucket, for lack of a better term.
Question on bereavement as well. In the unfortunate instance where a person would have the deaths of two close family members, could you explain how that would work then under the new PTO plan?
So it would work very similar to how it currently does. So if you look at the handbook language under the bereavement section, there is a section that talks about where the reserve leave bank could be accessed for significant bereavement needs. So that would be a situation where, you know, loss of two close family members, the process would be to access the leave reserve bank. Right now, in addition to bereavement, if there's an extenuating circumstance in the handbook, it comes to me as a request and I can approve additional sick leave. So it's the same concept and there'd be the same access. It would go through the leave bank versus reserve leave bank versus PTO.
Is that the way it works now then? If you happen to have two different
Yep.
unfortunate situations in a year?
So currently there's a maximum and then there's a sentence that says in an extenuating circumstance, the individual can request of the chief HR officer additional time from their sick leave bank. It's very similar concept, except it would be a leave reserve bank. It's a little bit different. But they'd have access to that time.
Excuse me, can you, on what you were just saying, can you clarify the difference between the leave bank and the PTO bank in this case?
Yep, so PTO would be the days that are accessible for any of those reasons, emergency, sick leave, any of those times, personal day, any of those times that were previously identified.
Yep.
What happens at the end of the year and what would happen in the transition is any sick leave that individuals have would go into that reserve leave bank. So it's still a bank that's separate. It's just not accessible. There's a process for accessing the leave reserve bank. Meaning it would need to be like an FMLA or board approved leave in which people can access that time. So it wouldn't be an individual only has X amount of days of PTO and there's nothing else. There is still that emergency bank.
But that only happens because of the transition.
It happens because of the transition and then that remains. So they'd have that reserve leave bank.
Yep.
And as an example, if somebody had 10 PTO days at the end of the school year and they're eligible to for the payout for 2 of those, the other 8 would roll into that reserve leave bank and they would accrue up to 90. So it's still a deposit in the bank, for lack of a better word.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then the rollover, when PTO rolls over, it goes to that bank.
That's the default unless people elect for a payout.
Yes,
of a
okay,
portion.
I'm sorry. I was thinking, I think I'm back where I was before, which is I understand. I think I just
Okay.
misunderstood something, answering a different question that made me worried. I misunderstood. So,
All right.
all right, we're good there. I just want to go back then to the dollar conversation we were having a second ago and just make sure and clarify. So as of right now, we're talking about a payable rate of 100 or 140 for support staff and educator administrators respectively. Which currently that means that we have a max of $500,000 impact annually at the district level.
Correct.
And so, but we are saying we're projecting that to be the case and likely stay the case, but we know, like anything, that number overtime may change, and we reserve the right to change that number accordingly. But we are not talking about every year there's like some variable rate. I don't know for sure what I'll get paid out because the district just is going to make up a new number every year, or because we're just going to divide how many people want to get payouts and see if we have enough. It's not anything in that realm. Like we're predicting a steady rate per day over time, and we'll announce them if and when they change in the future. Correct?
Absolutely. We had conversation about that too. Should a rate change in the future, it would be well in advance before anybody would need to start using their time or make an election. Most districts that we researched have had the same rate structure, or if they had a higher rate structure and they had budget concerns, they had to reduce it. So we felt very comfortable at this rate. To clarify the other part of your question about the 500,000, the only time that estimate would go higher would be if the district elected to increase the daily rates.
Correct. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking, it wasn't misconstrued, because I feel like talking about all these numbers makes it, especially before they're written in policy, I just want to make sure we're not misunderstanding the way it would work. So thank you.
Follow-up question, Julie. So I always like to take a minute and consider unintended consequences. You have somebody that maybe is relatively new to the district, has had very limited or no opportunity to build up a bank, and they haven't really built up much PTO yet. And for some reason, they need to use 4 or 5 days, maybe a week's worth, they're sick. Would not probably be an FMLA qualifying event. It's not long enough. But yet, especially for somebody that's relatively new, a week without pay, it's pretty painful. So I worry about, is there an exception to that? Or we would allow people to go negative, depending on their years of experience, or perhaps by board or superintendent rule. So we don't find ourselves either inadvertently punishing somebody for no fault of their own, or almost encouraging people to come to work when they probably shouldn't be.
So the current system does not allow for what I would say an additional leave benefit above and beyond the sick leave. What we do offer new hires, all employees, a short-term disability as well as long-term disability. So short-term disability is voluntary. That can bridge if somebody has a non-payment. Just to be clear, if somebody did have 5 days in a row, the amounts of PTO would cover that time. What we spent our time talking about is when we have maybe a new hire that takes days for other reasons and then doesn't have any time left and gets the flu for 3 or 5 days. So really educating on managing, that's your bucket of time, but managing for those types of scenarios.
It is, of course, very difficult to plan illnesses. So maybe you did take some time in the first semester, so to speak, and you're just out because you haven't got a lot, and then you get sick. So it sounds like this policy, I'm interpreting it correctly, you're just not going to get paid for those days.
And that would be no different than the current system.
Understood.
Yeah.
Short-term disability, is that a benefit that they have to pay for?
It's a voluntary benefit that they would enroll.
Would a short-term disability cover just a 3 or 4 day illness?
It would be an illness 3 days or more. So we have had people utilize it for the flu or those types of situations.
All right. Thank you. I'll think about that.
All right.
Related to that, do you have any statistics about how many, percentage of employees who do have short-term disability, and then what that cost would be
I do not.
to them? Okay.
I can tell you the cost is a tiered structure, so they opt in with what level of coverage per week. So there's about 12 different options that they can select for them. It can't exceed, I believe, 66% of their weekly salary. So there is a cap to it.
In all the discussion and exploration that you've had, has there been anyone who has expressed a preference for the current system over the potential of this PTO system?
There has not, but we have not started a broad brush of education. So the pieces that I am preparing in that case is a Loom video and an offer to catch the questions that come in. As well as we talked quite extensively at the team. The team previewed what the talking points were in the slides and gave highlights on, you should really, people are gonna need to know this, people are gonna need to know this. This is where you should really explain this part. So that was an initial review of the work group, as well as the benefits team has looked at that as well.
So what do you, it would need to be board approval first before you would roll out, or will you start to roll out some discussion?
Yeah, I think the piece where we are right now, we understand there's a lot of different budgetary considerations, compensation, benefits, things of that nature. This is something that, as far as the timing, was really now to bring it forward or not for next year at all for consideration. So we understand there's some of that timing, and when this comes back to may play into that. The thought process is we would share out with employees that this is under consideration with the PowerPoint and ask for additional questions should it be approved. Really, our staff would need to know the process for requesting time off next year prior to starting really September, when absences and coverage would need to start being planned.
So did I hear you would not share the PowerPoint until this would come to the board for a decision, until after that point?
The thought was we would share it for feedback, as this is something that's being considered.
Okay.
To have one more opportunity to capture questions and get a broader sense. We talked about putting it into a benefit survey. It's really challenging because this is complex and people need to see it and digest it and think about how does this impact me, versus they can answer, I like the current system, or I'd like a PTO model.
Okay, thank you.
Julie, could you speak a little bit to how it will be determined, the number of individuals per day at a site, since they're all different sizes?
Yeah, so if this does go forward for approval, the topics that we still have of work would be the calibration of our systems and our coding of our absences, as well as our administrative guidelines. That was the initial discussion with our HR admin team, was what number of absences would still allow you to function appropriately, given there's leeway, right? There's going to be the PTO that's unplanned for a sick child or sick self, things of that nature. So right now we're calibrating around what those would look like. What I can share is there'd be more opportunity than in the current system. So currently we determine how many educators or paras can be out district-wide. And really that's a blanket. So if the number is 20, that could be 20 people at Edison Elementary versus an East High School, or spread out more broadly across the district because of our system capability. So it would really be at the site level determining an amount, and it would be more than what the current allotment is.
And then if a person had a request and they were denied at the building level, is there some sort of an appeal process for that?
We have not worked through an appeal process. The challenge is those site approvals, having guidelines that we're consistently following for all, just like now, if somebody puts in a personal day, it's on the day that they're received. Obviously, in a system as large as ours, we have to have some really tight processes for consistency throughout the system. What I would say is that has been a discussion between the principals at the admin meeting about, well, what if somebody comes up and says, well, now my daughter's getting married, or that exception situation. So that's part of what we'll build into the guidelines with consistency, but that's going to take more conversation with our principals.
Thank you. I do appreciate seeing this and having the opportunity to look it over. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into for
Thank you.
that.
On that note, do you anticipate, given what you know now, that it will be a little bit more work at site level than the current system?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to underplay that. What we're trying to put in place is kind of a balance between staff putting in their request and using our frontline system, so they don't need to put in a request for approval and then go back into a system and put in the time, and then maybe they forget to do that in between those two times, and then we don't have a substitute. So we're trying to route it through our frontline system, which has capabilities. The amount of work, or what the work would look like at the site level, would be maintaining a calendar without names for confidentiality, but either it's open this day or it's not open that day for absences or for PTO. I have a couple sites that have offered to pilot with their admin assistant, so that we can really have a system that this is what it looks like. And it looks very different at a high school that already manages absences on a daily basis. They'd probably just blend it into that calendar.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I think of how different many of our sites are. I'm sure that in some ways this won't feel hardly, it might look slightly different. It won't feel like more work. And in some places it might feel like a little more work. But it sounds like hopefully not a lot more work at the site level, given.
Our goal is to provide them with the tools and have those discussions and train up staff over the summer.
Perfect. Then I think my last question on this topic for now is, I'm thinking especially about our, people who have been with us for longer than others. Is there anything we're concerned about in transitioning to this model that will feel like a loss of access or benefit or anything along those lines? Because I mean, I'll just be honest, like thus far I'm not seeing one, but that's something that I want to be mindful of, because that's obviously, I know, not any of our intent. So I'm sure it's something you all have talked a lot about, given how much work has gone into this. So I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we talked quite extensively from a new employee to a veteran employee and what the impact would be. We have several individuals on our team that are those veteran employees. And what I think they would share is, before it was not a payable benefit, there was not an incentive. Now there's at least something, should somebody choose. So it's really the choice on, does the person want the time? Are they planning a family and want that reserve leave built up? Or are the dollars more important to them this year? And they can change that from year to year with an election.
Perfect. So yeah, sounds like they weren't concerned then about any like loss of benefit. Really, most saw it just the additional options that you have.
I would say the biggest question was, am I going to lose my sick bank? And I think we can mitigate that with the design and just explaining it in the Loom video on. It goes into a reserve leave bank. There's a mechanism, but you don't lose that time should you have a surgery or something come up in your latter years of teaching or working.
Because the answer is no, you don't lose it, right? And if that's the concern, the answer is no.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
There is just a little bit of a caveat, though, if you have over the 90 days built up. Is that correct?
Yes, so that is addressed in the handbook language, so that time would be granted. However, if you dip below that time, so if you had 120 because it used to be higher, and you go to 85, the max you would ever accrue again would be the 90.
I have a very curious question. In all your research in the other districts who've explored PTO, because the cap, my understanding, at 500K, right, annually? What if everybody elected to take pays? Would that ever, and it went over that? Like, what should we be thinking about?
So
Or does that not happen?
it won't happen in this design because our max is 2 days if you have 60 days in your reserve leave bank.
or up to 4 days if you have more than that. So that's a little bit of a protection piece to make sure people have FMLA. But no, they can't in this current system unless we change the language to say, well, now you can get payout of 5 days or unlimited payout or something of that nature. Then the maximum somebody could have is 10 if that language was changed. So it would not go over the 500, the only 500,000, the only change, only if we changed the rates from 100 to 140, or if we expanded the number of days that people were eligible to be paid out. Question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on. Board business. Let's see, a couple monitoring reports that we had reviewed last meeting, work session. Oh, board meeting. Great, thank you, Kayla. And so now at this point, we would like to approve those monitoring reports. There's some additional discussion on those. Otherwise, if not, then can I have a motion to approve first monitoring report OE8, communicating with the board?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, one last time. Anyone, any other comments? Okay, then roll call, please.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Peng Tao,
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Kay Ager,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
and James Bacon.
And then 10B would be monitoring report OE9, communicating with the public. Would there be a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, so who made the motion? Peg made the motion? And Ed seconded. All right, great. Again, any other discussion or questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
James Bacon, Peng Tao.
Aye.
Nick Ross,
Aye.
Kay Ager,
Aye.
Ed Ruffalo,
Aye.
and Jason Kolpak.
Aye.
Okay, so it takes us to the end of our board business. Our next, future meetings are listed. Just to note that June 10th is our next meeting. So then at this time, I will ask for a motion to go into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C.
Before you take the motion, I will be abstaining from closed session due to potential conflict of interest.
So moved and to go into closed session.
Second.
Okay, then roll call on that, please, Karen.
Jason Kolpak,
Aye.
Chris Sauter,
Aye.
Peng Tao.
Aye.
Kay Ager,
Aye.
James Bacon, and Ed Ruffalo.
Aye.
Okay, so this concludes the public portion of our meeting tonight. There will be no additional board business after closed session. Thank you.